There's no sound.
This is new.
Yes, it should have sound.
Miriam, I don't think the webinar was started. It's the Zoom. It still says we're in a practice session.
Actually. Okay, I'm going to start it, and if we could try this again, and I'll start the webinar.
Good evening. Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being webcast on Comcast TV Channel 15 and live streamed on the city's YouTube channel at https://www.youtube.com/user/City of Hayward and on the city website at https://hayward.legistar.com/calendar.aspx. The mayor will call upon members of the city council, city staff, and other speakers by name and ask that they state their names before giving comments or remarks. Individuals participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. City council members and members of the public participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature, and the mayor will call upon them at the appropriate time. Members participating via teleconference wishing to speak should dial *9, and they will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received by email at list-mayor-council@hayward-ca.gov, city clerk at hayward-ca.gov, or via e-comment by 3 p.m. will be distributed to the city council and staff, published on the city's meeting and agenda center under documents received after published agenda, and entered into the record. Documents received after 3 p.m. through the adjournment of the meeting will be included as part of the meeting record and published the following day. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. In order to get the full Zoom experience, please make sure your application is up to date. Public members wishing to speak with the City Council can send an email to list-mayor-council@hayward-ca.gov or cityclerk@hayward-ca.gov.
Thank you and welcome everyone to this first full public meeting of the Hayward City Council for 2021. And with that, I would ask if the city clerk can put that image up, that I will ask that you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And with that, I will ask our Madam City Clerk, Ms. Lenz, to call the roll, please.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Councilmember Andrews.
Present.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Present.
Councilmember Marquez.
Present.
Councilmember Salinas.
Present.
Councilmember Wahab.
Here.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Present.
Mayor Halliday.
Here.
Thank you.
And now I'll ask our city attorney, Mr. Lawson, to give us closed session announcements for both a meeting that we did have a closed session last week, January 19th, and this evening earlier, January 26th.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Assuming you can hear me. There was a closed session on the 19th with all council members present. There were 3 items, and please refer to the posted agenda. First item was a
I
discussion.
can't hear. I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you, there's something wrong with your connection and we're not hearing you very well. Mr. Lawson? That sounds better.
Is that better?
Somewhat, yeah.
Here, why don't I work with the city clerk and then we'll come back after the presentation.
All right, we will defer the closed session announcement until after the next item, which is a bittersweet, but I'm so happy that we can do it item. And this is a certificate of commendation that we are presenting to Dr. Leroy M. Morishita, the now former president of Cal State University East Bay, for his service to that university and to our Hayward community. And so I'm just going to go ahead and read it. And so whereas Dr. Leroy M. Morishita, president of California State University East Bay, retired on December 31st, 2020, and whereas Dr. Morishita, the 5th Cal State University East Bay president since its founding in more than 60 years ago, has led the university since June 2011. And whereas a native Californian, Dr. Morishita holds a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from the University of California, Berkeley, and a Master of Science in Counseling from San Francisco State University. He also earned a doctorate in education in administration, planning, and social policy from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Whereas Dr. Morishita has 40 years of experience in higher education as an educator and administrator, he began his career in the California State University system in 1978 as a counseling coordinator and counselor for the Educational Opportunity Program at San Francisco State University. Before joining Cal State East Bay in 2011, he was Executive Vice President for Administration and Finance and Chief Financial Officer at San Francisco State University. And whereas under his leadership, more than 40,000 graduates, many of whom were the first in their families to attend college, received diplomas signed by Dr. Morishita. He was a champion for strengthening opportunities and programs for students, and under his direction, Cal State East Bay saw its highest ever fundraising, exceeding the target with $65 million raised during the Rising in the East campaign. And whereas Dr. Morishita's tenure has been characterized as one of partnerships and relationship building, his leadership with the Hayward Promise Neighborhoods initiative has resulted in positive outcomes for Hayward students from cradle to career, and many Hayward residents have been able to attend and graduate from CSUEB. And in addition, Dr. Morishita's focus on partnerships resulted in the settlement of a decade-old lawsuit with the city of Hayward. And yes, I see you cheering there, and me too. And in the process, rebuilt relationships between the two organizations. And that is so significant. Whereas as a dedicated educator who possesses the ability to apply his wide-ranging knowledge and experience, Dr. Morishita postponed his retirement at the end of 2020, of the 2020 academic school year, to provide thoughtful and experienced guidance and leadership through the unprecedented crisis in the wake of the novel coronavirus pandemic. And whereas admired for his dedication, leadership, and enduring commitment to improve educational opportunities for thousands of students throughout the Bay Area, Dr. Leroy Morishita has exemplified the highest attributes of responsive and forward-looking leadership, for which he merits special public honors and commendations. now, therefore, I, Barbara Halliday, Mayor of the City of Hayward, do hereby commend Dr. Leroy M. Marisha for his outstanding contribution and longtime service to the California State University system, and offer to him, on behalf of the entire Hayward City Council, and I believe our entire community, our best wishes for a happy and joyous retirement. And so thank you so much. And I will just add that it is the partnerships that I will think most about you. And also thank you for your many kindnesses toward me, and I'm sure many of my colleagues and people on the city staff. But I remember that very early, you invited me to your office for lunch, and we talked about the relationship. And I think that together, that partnership helped a lot of young people in Hayward get a good education. I've been happy to participate in so many of the joint events that we have held together during your tenure. And so I just want to personally offer, and I'm glad to have this opportunity. And thank you for joining us tonight, and his wonderful wife, Barbara, who was also very much a part of all of this, I think, maybe in a little bit in the behind the scenes or in the background, but she was there for many of these events. I'm so glad that you could join us tonight. Thank you. And, let's just applaud him. We would be having our whole council chambers applauding you in a different time, but I'm just so glad that you could be here tonight. And would you like to say anything?
Well, thank you, Mary Halliday, and thank you to the council members for this commendation. I greatly appreciate it, but I really appreciate the partnership that we did develop, and I believe it was a really solid partnership. And that was one of my goals when I became the president at the university, was to really hope to amend some of the fences I think that had been broken, and to reestablish those ties, and hopefully to make the university really a part of the city, and really get our students involved through the civic engagement activities, through our promised neighborhoods, through all the kinds of activities that we've tried to do in terms of partnering with the university, and the Sustainable Cities project that we did, right? When we did those 3 projects with the city, I was really proud and pleased of that. So all those kinds of things. So I thank you all. I really greatly appreciate it. I'm proud that 3 of the council members are alums of the university, right? And so go Pioneers. And
3 alums.
and really appreciate all that you all have done. Yeah, you have been really wonderful, and I really greatly appreciate it. I've loved my time there as president, and but I am glad to be retired now and enjoying that. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And actually, we do have a real certificate, which I'm sure that we will be getting to you, not just what I was reading from this paper. We will have a real thing, right, Madam City Manager? Yes, we will be getting that to you. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we really appreciate that you could be here and that we had this opportunity. We missed it in December before you left. So thank you for joining us tonight, and so that we could properly thank you for all the things you accomplished. I really have to say, Hayward Promise Neighborhood is, brought not in addition to raising money for the university, you helped bring a lot of money into our community through that initiative as well. And so thank you so much. Yes, Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you.
Alumni.
Yeah, my raise hand feature doesn't seem to be working, but I specifically just wanted to thank you for your leadership. One of the things I remember early on working at Cal State East Bay when you first joined, and people are always nervous as to what does that mean? What is the tone, the tenor of the leadership going to be? I have said this to you directly in a previous conversation, and I'm going to say it again. I just really want to highlight the fact that so many students really appreciated your advocacy for them. Primarily, usually administration kind of, goes about, does their business and so forth. And you have always stopped. You've always said hello to people, something that they actually didn't experience in the previous administration and so forth. I really just appreciate your kindness and your gratitude and how humble you are. Both you and your wife have been incredibly supportive of me personally, as well as just the community in general. So I really thank you. I know that you talked about your travel plans earlier with me, and I hope that, we can all resume back normal life and you guys can travel and enjoy your sightseeing and family and so forth. So I wish you nothing but happiness and wellness, and thank you both for everything you guys have done for Hayward. So thank you again.
Thank you, Aisha.
Okay, so, well, thank you so much, and we're glad to see you, and we hope that we see you again in Hayward. So come back and visit.
This meeting is being recorded.
I shall do that. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening. Okay, so I hope my power isn't going out or anything, but my lights are flickering, and I don't know why, but if it does, we have our new Mayor Pro Tem, Wahab, would be ready to take over, and I'll do what I can to stay here. Okay, gosh. Okay, we're going to now move back to the closed session announcement. Mr. Lawson?
Thank you, Mayor. Is the audio better now?
Yes, much better, yes.
First, let me say that as a graduate of California State University and having attended alumni events hosted by President Marishta, I also want to extend my congratulations on his retirement and thank you for service to the Hayward community. There are two reports regarding regarding closed session. There was a closed session on January 19th. Please refer to that agenda for the details, but there were three topics covered. First was labor with the council's negotiating team. The topic covered all labor groups. The council took no reportable action. Second, the council discussed pending litigation. There were 4 cases currently pending. The captions are all on the closed session agenda. Council took no reportable action. And finally, the council discussed property-related transactions involving several Caltrans Route 238 properties. The council took no reportable action. Tonight, January 26, there were 2 items on the closed session agenda. First, litigation involving 1 case, anticipated litigation, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 and 54956.9 subsections e, subsection 5, involving a threat of litigation, with Councilmember Marquez recusing herself from that discussion. With all remaining council members present, no action was taken, no reportable action was taken. Second item involving property, involving Caltrans parcel en route 238, with Mayor Halliday recusing herself. Council discussed it with all other members and took no reportable action. That concludes the report.
Thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to public comments. This is your opportunity, members of the public, to comment on any items that are not otherwise that are not on our agenda this evening. And so I will just open public comments and ask our city clerk if there's anyone, if she has anyone who wants to make one online. I don't see any hands raised from the attendees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, it doesn't appear that we have public members wishing to speak at this point. So if you wish to speak and you are using the Zoom application, please click the raise hand function and your name will be called. No, Madam Mayor, we don't have any individuals wishing to speak at this moment.
Okay, then we will close public comments and move on to our consent calendar this evening, which is items 1 through, we had a lot, 1 through 16. So first I'll ask the city clerk if anyone from the public has asked that any of these items be pulled for comment. Oh, I see it.
I believe I see one person, Nicole, is raising her hand.
And let me, before we go to Nicole, ask if any council members want to pull any of these items? Councilmember Wahab?
Yeah. Again, my raise hand feature is not working, so I'm not
try
sure.
to
If
watch.
Tracy can- yeah, thank you. And I'll speak up. If we can pull item number 16.
Yes. Oh, item number 16. Okay. And I am also going to suggest that we pull item number 15, which is adoption of a resolution in support of two different assembly bills in the state legislature. They are very related to item number 19, I believe it is, on our agenda this evening. And so I'm going to suggest that we pull item 15 off the consent calendar and move it down in the agenda to be considered along with item number 19 when we get to it. So if there are no objections to that, we will remove item 15 from the consent calendar and consider it when we consider item number 19 later. Okay. So with that, yes, did we get, we have a couple members of the public now raising their hands. So Madam City Clerk, do you know which items they would like to have pulled?
Madam Mayor, unfortunately, I'm not able to communicate with our attendees. So, but I see that they have their hands raised. What we could do is we could
All right, we can just go to them. Let me go to Councilmember Andrews first too.
all right.
Yes, also number 1 for me.
Okay. Okay, that's the, okay. All right, so why don't we ask then first, well, I see Alexis Villalobos is the first hand raised, and then, well, Nicole Gehring.
All right. Should we allow them to speak now?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Just to tell us which items they want to pull off, and then we'll come back to them for comments on those, okay?
All right. Sounds good. Thank you. Alexis, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I just had the clarifying question. If something gets pulled off calendar, is this the time to comment on what it's pulled, or is it until the moment that it's brought up again?
Did you want to comment on item number 15?
The one that you pulled, yes.
Yes.
Item 15.
Yes, I think the appropriate time would be when we get to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you. All right. So that was, and now we have Nicole. Go ahead.
Good evening. I would like to pull agenda item 13 and speak to that.
All right. So we will come back to you right after we vote on the rest of the consent calendar, and then we'll go to items, well, 1 and 13. But
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to
go
move
ahead. Councilmember
items
Marquez.
2 through 12 and 14.
A second.
And 16?
No, 2
Oh, no.
through 12 and 14.
That was pulled. Okay, and 15 was moved. Okay, yes. So Councilmember Marquez has moved those items that have not been pulled, which is 2 through 12 and number 14. Is there a second? Councilmember Wahab?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Moved by Councilmember Marquez, seconded by Councilmember Wahab. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Yes.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Yes.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we will go to item number 1, Councilmember Andrews.
Yes, that one I didn't want to be part of consent and wanted a separate vote.
Yes. And the reason for that is, did you want to comment, or did you just want to?
I wasn't present at that meeting and don't feel comfortable.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So now
I'll move item number 1.
I'll second.
Okay. On a motion by Councilmember Marquez, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Wahab. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Same.
Councilmember Marquez.
Yes.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Yes.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Oh, Councilmember Lamden. I'm sorry. Apologize. Yes. Councilmember Lamden.
All right. So that's 6 aye votes. And then we will go to number 16, Councilmember Wahab.
Number 13, Mayor. Number 13 was pulled by a member of the public.
Correct.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. Yeah. So we'll go to item number 13 and we'll ask, I believe that was Ms. Gehring. I hope I'm saying that right. We can get her back on the line.
Correct. All right.
And I think we have someone else here also now, maybe who wants to comment on that. So, Ms. Gehring, go ahead.
I need to be unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Oh, you can hear me. I'm still, okay, great. Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. Nicole Gehring with Associated Builders and Contractors. We are in Alameda County training people every day. We've got over 800 apprentices that we're overseeing, and they would love to have, these young men and women would love to have the ability to work on City of Hayward projects. So as you move forward with your community workforce agreement, I would ask that you open up your process to all of the different stakeholder groups in the region, such as your ABCs, your AGCs, your UCONs, and all of those different groups in order to hear their concerns to make your projects run more smoothly in your city. I know that there have been lots of concerns expressed with how your current project labor agreement or community workforce agreement has been faring. You have bid amounts have been increased. You've experienced fewer bidders. You've had contractors who used to bid there are no longer bidding. So you have a smaller pool. You have burdens that are hindering the smaller contractors and functional difficulties in the PLA. And your major project, the 21st Century Library project, was 1.5 years delayed. And there was recently 10 of the subs on that project were sent to the Labor Commissioner for alleged violations of inability to meet apprenticeship ratios and unsupervised apprentices. And those subs were not even from the area, including the general who's from San Diego. So you're really doing a disservice to your community by not even being able to even use the local contractors. Out of those 10, only one was from Hayward and the other local was from Oakland, and the rest were out of county. So that doesn't serve your community well at all. And the local hire information on that Hayward project was only 4.3%. And you already had an artificially low local hire of 30% of craft hours. So you're having difficulty meet it. So I would just ask if you would include more people in the process and allow more people to be part of your great work you're doing in your city, and allow everyone to add value, and you yourself add value to your city contracts. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. So I see another hand raise, but it's Andreas Kluber. Did you want to speak to this item, Mr. Kluber?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I just, if I could, I just wanted to very quickly, first of all, thank the city staff and council members for the long partnership we've had working together through the community workforce agreement. We feel it's been rather successful, and so far we've heard from council members and others it's been successful. In fact, the separate agreement on the library, which was our pilot project, were not for the PLA. There could have been much worse outcomes on that one. We think we worked very closely with city staff to address some of the issues. So we fully support, though, anything can be improved. And we definitely look forward to, during this extension year, working together with city staff on areas that we can strengthen and improve. This We've had a lot more experiences working with other project labor agreements and community workforce agreements with other communities, and have many innovative ways to also look at improving it. So we hope that you go ahead and give us the extension and allow us the ability to work with staff on coming back with a more longer term agreement. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I see another hand raised from the public, and that is Javier Vasquez. Mr. Vasquez, can we ask him if he wants to speak to this item as well?
Yes, please go ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is it appropriate to address item 15 in this public comment?
No, we have actually moved item 15 to later in the agenda and are going to be considering it in conjunction with item 19 that is on our agenda this evening. That is a related item. So if that's what you wanted to comment on, if you could just wait till we get to that.
Sure. Sorry about that.
All right, thank you. So I don't see any other hands raised right now from the public. So
Mayor, I'll move the item.
I'll second, and if I could comment briefly.
Yes, go ahead. Councilmember Wahab, did you want to comment?
I appreciate the efforts of staff as well as the building trades, as well as the comment that was made in regards to some of the difficulties that we've had in the past. I do want to make it very clear that a lot of the difficulties that we face are not necessarily related to the PLA, but you guys all know I believe in improvements. So I would like to ask staff with this extension that they make sure that they try to incorporate as much opinion in our deliberations for the future with this extension being in place. I'd love to see what some of the other comments are, but I strongly will stand with workers being paid fairly and appropriately. So thank you.
And Mayor, our plan is to basically work with the building trades over the next couple of months, do a comprehensive review of the current agreement, and then come back to the council in a work session to revisit sort of the experience with the current agreement and to get feedback from the council on potential elements that might be incorporated into a revised or updated agreement.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Briefly, I will be supporting this item. Just want to thank staff, the building trades, and you, the mayor, and former Councilmember Almendel. I know you guys took a strong leadership role in making this happen. It was a discussion many years in the working and approved back in 2015. So hopefully we can continue that discussion, and I'm happy to extend the agreement, but continue the conversation with the building trades. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Zermeño.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, staff, for bringing this up. I think it's an extremely important piece of government that we're trying to do here, that we're passing. Yes, everything can be improved. I believe that the local hiring, I believe that the unionism is strong and must be kept strong. So I do support CWAs 100%, as I did way back when it was called PLAs. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any more hands raised right now. And I will. I just want to ask the city manager. So when this comes back, it will be in the time frame of the 6 month of 6 months from now, or the one. Since we're extending the agreement for a year, but we're dating that back to when it expired, June 30th. So we'll be then considering this again in June before we decide on whether we want to take up the additional 6 month extension.
That's the hope. Is we added in the additional 6 month extension just in case we weren't able to get through the review and feedback from council and the negotiations before June.
Okay, thank you. And so with that, and seeing other hands raised on the motion by Councilmember Wahab, seconded by Councilmember Marquez, to approve this item, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Yes.
Councilmember Marquez.
Yes.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Zermeño.
Yes.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes. And the motion carries with 7 aye votes. Okay, and now we will move to item number 16. And again, I'll reiterate that item number 15 is being moved to be heard in conjunction with item number 19 this evening. So item number 16, that was Councilmember Wahab, or Mayor Pro Tem Wahab.
Do we want to do public comments on this, or?
I do. Well, you pulled it, so I'm going to start with you.
Okay. I just wanted to reiterate, when we did our interviews, I want to say in August, September, specifically the Planning Commission is one of the commissions that really take care of a lot of the housing and potentially economic development opportunities that are coming to the city. I specifically wanted to ask staff in this meeting if we can, if it was asked that we appoint somebody to the Planning Commission at that moment in time, which we approved. And I was asked by council members for both Mayor Halliday and I to approve an alternate option in case there was a vacancy. We have had that vacancy. Can staff speak to it a little bit more as to what this process is?
Well, I will say, I think we have adopted a new policy, and it's not just Planning Commission, but when we have interviews, and we don't always, we have lots of people who apply, and we're very grateful to that. But we can't appoint everyone. We don't, we only have a certain number of openings, but we know that people do have to resign from time to time during the year. And so we have adopted a policy of selecting alternates for the commissions that can be called upon mid-year, so that we don't have to open up an interview process again. So I think particularly with the Planning Commission, it's not a spot you want to leave open and, between January and July. So does that speak
Yes. I appreciate that. And I did support, after being asked for Mr. Okenda to be named an alternate for the Planning Commission, should a mid-year vacancy arise, which we saw with Councilmember Andrews being elected to City Council. I was also clear I wanted to vote on each appointment as they came up. So staff, can you remind me and all of us of Mr. Okenda's position on affordable housing?
I don't know that that's something that we have notes on. I mean, I believe he is an attendee at the meeting. So if the council wants to ask him I don't think it would be appropriate for us to comment on his position.
I think we did have the chance to interview him when he applied, and we selected him as the alternate. So I'm not sure I feel comfortable with, I don't think that we had envisioned a process where we would be re-interviewing.
And the reason why I bring this up is, one, I would like for future interviews regarding commissioners to be recorded. This was a public meeting, but it was not recorded. And to the best of my recollection and my notes, Mr. Okenda stated that he would not champion affordable housing. So without further clarification, I'd just like to understand from his perspective, and that's why I was hoping that he'd be on, which he is, if Mr. Okenda can address that, because that's exactly what I heard.
All right. Well, I see Mr. Okenda has raised his hand, so I guess he would like to address that. So can we bring him on? And I do see that we perhaps have another speaker on this item, but I'll call on Mr. Okenda first.
All right. Please go ahead.
Hi. Thank you. I'm happy to answer this as a follow-up question, council member, just for clarification for the public. I'm definitely a person who strongly supports affordable housing. As someone who grew up experiencing unstable housing, who has experienced homelessness as a child and a young adult, affordable housing is an incredibly important issue to me. And I've done a lot of work personally and professionally in my legal and policy advocacy to further that cause. So just for the record, thank you for asking.
Definitely. And, I appreciate that clarification. It was to my recollection that, and in my notes, I was a little surprised that that's what I heard at that Planning Commission meeting or that appointment process meeting. So again, I would like for this, especially for the public, to be able to see who we are appointing, especially as I know Mr. Okenda's work, as well as the fact that he sits on multiple commissions. And I also would like to ensure that we have a proper attendance rating, which was another issue that I did have a concern with at a 60% for 2 years in a row attendance rating. So those are my questions and concerns. That's all I wanted to bring up. And thank you, Mr. Okenda, for the clarification. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I have seen that the hand that was raised is not raised anymore. Did you?
That's correct, Mayor Halliday. I don't see the person.
So I will, no, it just went up again. So let's call on him, Mr. Asim Ali.
Yes. Go ahead. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and esteemed members of the council. I terribly sorry to jump in at this point. I was actually more interested in item 8, but it seems that you guys have progressed down the line, and there was a mention of moving those items to the end. I'm not sure if I misinterpreted. Is it the end of the meeting, or is it moved to a different date and time?
Item 8 was approved with the rest of the consent calendar. It was item 15 that was moved to the end of, considered along with item number 19 later, a hearing item. So item number 8 has already been adopted. I'm sorry. Did you want to make a comment about it anyway? And item number 8 is adoption of a resolution regarding new service stations selling fossil fuels, basically saying that it will be the council's policy to have any new service stations, in addition to getting planning commission review, be reviewed by our economic development committee and by council as a whole. So, Mr. Ali, did you want to comment on that item?
I was more interested in clarification, and that just about does it, Mayor. So then I'll look further into the amendment and just make sure that I have a full understanding as I'm in that business. But yes, thank you so much.
All right, great. And I'm sure our staff would also be, happy to, provide any information you may need after looking at it. Okay, then with that, I think we were at item number
16.
Yeah, so I don't see any other hands raised right now from the public. So I do see, I'm sorry, council member. So we're on item number 16. Council member Zermeño.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's say I was not present at the interviews last July, but in my mind, if we choose an alternate at those interviews, that means that that alternate should be completely qualified for that position. So I am not sure if we needed this conversation today. Thank you.
Would anyone like to move the item?
So moved.
All right, Councilmember Salinas has moved the item.
Second.
And I think I saw Councilmember Marquez first, and I think she has her hand raised as well. So Councilmember Marquez, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second the item and really happy that my colleagues have agreed. I've worked for several years to get to the point where we do have an alternate for all commissions. I think it's very, very important that we give members of the public an opportunity to serve. In the last few years, tonight we had 2 resignations on our consent calendar. People's family situation changes, people have to relocate, family commitments. So I definitely don't want seats to sit vacant until the next interview process. So really happy we finally instituted this alternate option, and happy to support Zachary Okenda being appointed to the Planning Commission, which I will highlight is a vacant seat because we have a new colleague, Councilmember Angela Andrews. So happy to support this motion.
All right, and Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you. I'm also happy to support this motion and also echo Councilmember Marquez's appreciation for having this process. Our interview process is intended to be our vetting opportunity. And so, and I think we did that well. And certainly we've heard Mr. Okenda talk about affordable housing many, many times in council. And for the record, his attendance was 70%, not 60%. And I'd like us to be accurate when we are talking about issues, and also consistent with our policies that we've set as a full board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, seeing no other comments, I will say that I will be happy to support this motion as well. Mr. Okenda has served the city in a variety of capacities. And so, and despite, and, you know, we did talk to him about the attendance, and I think he had an explanation. So I'm happy to support too. Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. And to our city clerk, our attendance rating is at the requirement that we prefer is about 75%, correct?
That's correct, 75%.
Yeah, and we had 2 years in a row where we had some attendance problems. So I just want to clarify that. Again, I appreciate the clarification. I also do agree with the alternate policy. My clarification was more around the affordable housing piece that I did hear. We know that that is a huge problem in our community and probably ongoing problem. So I definitely want to ensure that we just appoint individuals that are very supportive of affordable housing as well as other projects. So thank you, and I'm happy to vote.
All right. So on the motion by Councilmember Salinas, seconded by Councilmember Marquez, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Yes.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Aye.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion carries with 7 aye votes. Thank you. All right, now we are going to move on to item number 17, our work session item. This is our annual report on Measure C revenue. The Measure C was approved by voters in Hayward on June 3rd, 2014. And we will, I believe, hear from our finance director, Mr. Clausen.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. It's my pleasure this evening to present the annual report for Measure C. As I would say, everyone probably within the Hayward community it has seen the impacts, the positive impacts of Measure C around our community. I've got a short presentation that I'll give, and then happy to answer any questions that anybody has as we go here. So let me pull this up. Can you all see my screen? Great.
Yes.
All right. So as I mentioned, we're here tonight to discuss the Measure C annual report. I'll remind Council of the priorities that were set and established for when the measure was on the ballot to fund capital infrastructure projects, add to some police services, specifically in the communications division of the organization, address illegal dumping, litter control, and graffiti abatement around the city. So thus far, some of the major projects that Measure C has funded in the capital projects area. The beautiful 21st Century Library and Community Learning Center is mostly complete and open. Unfortunately, due to COVID, it's not as open as we would all like it to be. And work continues on the Heritage Plaza project, and that should be wrapping up this year, I believe. We retrofitted fire stations 1 through 5, and different work went on at each of the fire stations depending on the need. Early on, did some major, the largest pavement improvement project in a single year for the city in previous fiscal year, helping substantially to improve the city's PCI. And this year we are substantially underway with the Fire Station 6 and Regional Fire Training Center project. It is going gangbusters, and we will probably finish in record time. Hopefully, this current rainstorm doesn't slow things down too much. This is a quick look at the expenditures over the years here. showing, the majority of the funds are being spent on capital projects. We do have some operating expenditures funding the items that we spoke about, the staffing in the police department, as well as in our maintenance services division or department, to help with the graffiti abatement and litter removal. We've also got some debt service that we have we took on very early in the library and learning center project so that we could fund that project and keep up with the demand on cash flow there. We see this year the Fire Station 6 and Training Center expenses really have an uptick as we broke ground this fiscal year, kicking the project off, and we'll continue to see that similar trajectory next year. And this project is really the final currently planned major capital project as it relates to Measure C. We've spoken about many different possibilities, but to this point, we haven't programmed the funds in the remaining years of the tax. I mentioned the improvements at fire stations 1 through 5. We'll kind of run through very quickly kind of a view, literally, of some of the work that was done on the capital projects throughout the city. So these are the fire stations that have been updated thus far. Obviously, the beautiful library is really just came into its own over the last couple of years, opening in September of 2019. Really can't wait to, for many reasons, to end the pandemic, but to get the library up and operating again at full capacity. Heritage Plaza, like I said, should be done here this fiscal year. Hoping to have that complete so that the community can enjoy it as we've all envisioned, and offer a safe outdoor space for the community. Fire Station 6 and the Regional Fire Training Center is underway. It is definitely a major project, one that we are happy to have found partners in Chapeau, Las Positas Community College to help us fund the training center that will also act as a partial campus for the college district's fire science training program, and it will really be an amazing place that we envision will be used not only by our firefighters, but for those around the region and the state, offering some really state-of-the-art training equipment that won't be found really in many other training facilities around the country. So it's very, very exciting. This is some of the graffiti abatement and litter removal efforts that have gone on around the city. The maintenance service division or department has done a fantastic job to help to beautify the city and get rid of some of the things that we do not want in our community. These are some of the positions that I mentioned. Early on, we had some other positions sort of identified early in the life of Measure C that have changed a bit. But I'm happy to say that we have filled each one of the vacancies, and each one of the vacant positions is full and allowing us to offer the community, good on all of the promises that were made while we were out, while the community was voting in support of the measure. This is sort of a graphic example of the expenditures as we've seen them over the years. Early it was obviously the library and learning center that we were spending most on. The next couple of years, it will be the Fire Station 6 and Training Center. And then we'll see it level off quite a bit and hopefully build fund balance and allow us to do more in the capital projects area. So that being said, we do anticipate that we will have a shortfall if we spend as we anticipate on the Fire Station 6 and Regional Training Center in the next fiscal year, a shortfall of approximately $5.4 million. Essentially, this is a cash flow shortfall, as we are aware. As I mentioned, we don't have other capital projects programmed at this point. My hope is that revenues outpace what we've got projected. Right now, it's a little unpredictable, simply because of the pandemic. But if they do continue to go at the rate, then we will have this short-term shortfall that we will need to sort of come up with a solution for. There are a bunch of options that we are looking at. Many of these will not take much time to mobilize. And so that's why we haven't come to council with a recommendation at this point. And really, my hope is that things smooth, the revenues increase, and maybe expenditures don't go as fast as we are projecting, and we won't have a need to finance any of it. If we do come to a place where we do have to finance a portion of the work, we will finance as little as possible over the shortest term possible, so that we don't take on any additional long-term debt. So that being said, that's really the overview, and very happy to report that the projects are having a huge positive community impact, and we will continue to try to keep that moving in the right direction.
Thank you. I think we do have some questions here. However, this is a work session, so I think I'm going to take any public comment on this item first. And I don't actually see that anybody in the public has their hands raised at the moment. If there's anybody in the public who would like to comment, please, if you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. Otherwise, I believe *9, if the telephone number for that is 1-669-900-6833. Seeing no hands going up, I'll close public comment and go back to the council. And I see that we have Councilmember Zermeño has his hand raised.
Dustin, thank you very much for the report. Thank you for all the voters who voted for Measure C. That's most tremendous. And then also to our firefighters who helped pass the measure. I'm thinking that some of our folks on the public may not know what debt service is. Could you explain that just a little bit?
Sure. My apologies. So when the city has large projects that they need cash up front to fund, we will go out and seek a financing instrument so that we can essentially pay for the project ahead of the revenues, and pay for the debt service over the life of the loan, the financing, similar to a car note or a mortgage, essentially getting the money up front so that we can purchase what we need to, and then paying for it over time.
Okay. All right. And as far as those negative dollars next year, that the debt service could also be used to leverage that?
Well, so the debt service we are essentially on the hook for.
Okay.
So we'll be paying that. There are a couple of items that we will be looking at prior to taking on any additional any additional financing, essentially to be able to avoid having to pay interest for anything. I think, it's probably been clear to council. While I've been with the city, we have taken on very minimal debt and will continue to operate in that way because I hate to pay interest. And that's not going to change anytime soon. But certainly if we have to do that, we will do what we need to do to get the project completed. We certainly don't want to have something sit there because we are avoiding debt that we could easily take on and pay for. But we'll do anything we can to avoid the interest.
Yes, and thank you. And please do that because I really don't want to see any delays on our fire training center and our fire station out there. So again, thank you very much. Good job.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Marquez.
Thank you. I have a lot to say, so I'll try to be brief. Just want to acknowledge the voters. I want to acknowledge everyone who volunteered, many of us on this meeting, to pass this measure back in 14. But it's really, really important for the public to know that these are your dollars. And as you can see, we've really stretched those dollars. We've done a lot of great work. A lot of stuff is still in the pipeline, but I take that responsibility seriously in that we keep our promises. So thank you for everyone involved, including the Friends of the Library. They were instrumental in getting us our new library. And yes, the firefighters helped immensely. So kudos to everyone who had a part in this. Also, just stress to the public, you heard it, half sales tax. So you got to spend your money in Hayward. Can you briefly tell us, Dustin, I know there was a Supreme Court decision made last year, which is allowing us to actually receive more revenue from online purchases. Can you just give us a brief reminder of that?
Sure. So it's commonly referred to as the Wayfair decision because it was, I believe, a case heard first in the state of South Dakota versus Wayfair. And essentially the decision has said that just because you make a transaction online and it comes to, in this case, is delivered by a company like Amazon to a community member whose address is in Hayward, that the jurisdiction no longer loses out on that tax. That companies like Amazon, like Wayfair, that deliver products are now subject to the same type of taxes, the sales and use tax, that brick and mortars, as we refer to retail stores, are subject to, and they are no longer able to sort of abscond the same tax. That they were for quite some time. And so that's been a long fought battle and a huge win for municipalities.
Okay, so that works to our favor. We should potentially continue to get more revenue from that decision. So a lot of people are shopping online because of the pandemic. So want people to keep safe. So for those that have to do that, luckily we're going to see the benefits of those transactions, but also encourage you to support our Costco's, our Targets, our Home Depot. Those are and buy your car in Hayward. So please continue to support Hayward so we can have the revenues go up. So hopefully we don't have this deficit. But are we looking at possibly refinancing the current loan to see if we could get a better interest rate? What can we do to address that?
So it is. We look at all of our debt on a at least an annual basis to see if there's an opportunity to refund, to improve either interest rate or reduce payments, depending on what opportunities are out there. To date, there has not been a great opportunity to do that. But we will continue to look at it on an ongoing basis. And if the opportunity arises, we will absolutely strike. We got a pretty darn good deal when we went out and issued the certificates of participation, which is, for all intents and purposes, another word for a bond or a loan. When we issued them. And so, at this point, when we've looked, it hasn't made sense to do that. But that doesn't mean that it won't make sense in the future.
Okay. And that's something that our Budget and Finance Committee would be looking at, that would be brought to their attention.
So it's something that internal staff looks at with our financial advisors and our debt service advisors every 6 to 12 months. And when it comes up, we will certainly bring it to the Council Budget and Finance Committee. We do at least annually a review of the city's long-term liabilities, which includes the city's debt service portfolio. And the conversations happen there, as they come up and as the information is relevant.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question for clarification on page 2 of the staff report, under revenues, it says other partnering contributors. Is that referring to Chabot and their generous partnership with the training center? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to thank them and acknowledge our chief for getting those dollars. And hopefully we could secure more dollars from other agencies we'll be partnering with. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Wahab.
Thank you, Mayor. And we're just at questions at this point, correct?
No, questions and comments. We had.
Thank you. So for Measure C, and I just want the public to understand that for the most part, what we have estimated is about $15 million annually. Is that correct?
I think that's what we originally and initially estimated when we were doing original projections back in 14, 15, 16. We've seen revenues consistent.
Sorry, Dustin. It was actually, we estimated closer to 10 million and
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's closer to 15, right? Except for the economy now, because obviously we know the economy's in struggles. So roughly about that, I did want to highlight the purpose of this particular ballot measure. It was definitely to fund public safety services and emergency medical services, firefighting, police protection, and restore and maintain Hayward city services and facilities, which has been at the forefront of a lot of what we're doing due to infrastructure and so forth. But the last item that I feel like I never ever hear about is and safe space for after school homework and tutoring. I don't ever see us talk about that, and I would like to address that. I understand we put some investment into the library, but the library is not, it's a building, right? So what about the after school homework and tutoring? That is not an infrastructure, it's a program.
So that is a program that is actually run by the library. We provide a significant amount of after-school tutoring programs, and those are actually done on the school campus sites and through a partnership with HUSD. So there are volunteers. We also have some at both library branches, so Weeks branch and at the main library. So it's a variety of programs. And so, yes, I think the ballot language talked about providing space for, if I recall correctly. So that would have been the new library building. But, there obviously, as part of the annual budget discussions, the council can talk about Measure C funding and after we finish the capital projects and have some revenue back in that fund. I think there's a policy discussion that is, we can have with the council about where additional funds might be, where the council may want to spend additional funds. I can speak this evening. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
And I would just add too that having been actually one of the tutors in the program who worked for a while at the main library when it was held there, the facility there was really inadequate, and I think that when clearly Measure C was in large parts supported by people and put on the ballot to help us build that new library. And so I think, that is really what we were talking about, is a safer and really better and more space for, tutoring, for those tutoring activities that we had been doing for a while.
Okay. And don't get me wrong, I fully support our infrastructure investments because we need them, especially since we are on a fault and so forth. The reason why I bring it up is because, this was for June 2014. It's a 20-year sales tax measure that is supposed to consistently be invested into our city. One of the attachments for this particular item did not show any more investment in the library. So I am concerned with that. I will just highlight this point, and I said it last night, that the best prevention to crime and community struggles and so forth is early intervention, which to me is homework, tutoring, opportunities, jobs, things like that. So I would like us to eventually move on into that direction, hopefully in fiscal year 2022. Personally, that would be a priority for me as well. And if we can definitely focus on that, because in June 2016, November 2016, November 2018, and this past November 2020, we have had several different measures put up, and they largely say for police patrols, fire PD, firefighter, paramedic services, repair some streets, 911, and so forth. And on 3 of the measures of the 6 that we have, 5, I'm sorry, that we have introduced, it talks about the library. So I just want to put the library and those community services at the forefront of what we also talk about besides our day-to-day infrastructure corrections and improvements. And I fully support the fire station. I fully support that we do need to invest in our infrastructure as a city. So I just wanted to highlight that and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Andrews.
I just want to concur on the what Mayor Pro Tem Wahab was stating on the library services. Also, wanted to see more at the forefront, more funding towards illegal dumping and graffiti removal. I'm surprised I didn't see Councilmember Zermania on the list of FTEs on there, because he's one-man crew right now. So I really want to see more funding going towards that, because that is a big concern for our community.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Salinas.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge staff and really delivering our commitment to through Measure C, and it we get a lot of pushback when we put measures like this on the ballot. And a lot of those who push back on us, I don't know whether or not they're watching tonight, but can you see me?
I see you.
Oh, okay. For some reason, my screen flickered on me. Okay. Anyways, I just wanted to thank staff. Yes, I think we're going to have some great firehouses. I'm sure, I know there was a leak in the roof in Firehouse 1. I'm sure that's going to get fixed or was fixed, which is good. I was just listening to the comments about the library. The library, the library, especially during the pandemic, I think the library has been responding phenomenally to students who are adjusting to distance learning, and they've been, they're hustlers over there, man. They're over there hustling technology, hotspots, and computers, and tutoring, and I mean they're doing a lot of great work over there. And so I know the library's been closed, but the nice thing is that they have been able to continue some critical services for students during this pandemic. So, but I also, the one thing I really wanted to highlight is maintenance services, all of the illegal dumping response. If there's one thing I see on social media constantly is, people will, take pictures of illegal dumping in their street or something, and they'll put it up on social media, and and they and everyone complains, and and spends a lot of time talking about it, and and so I just wanted to acknowledge just the outstanding work that the maintenance services department is doing. Those guys are out there. I'll get confirmation emails on Sundays. I'll get confirmation emails, on weekends, across the time, throughout the day I use Access Hayward incredibly a lot. And so they're out there really the front lines of combating a lot of the trash and particularly illegal dumping in our city. So I'm just, that's why I always tell the city manager, tell the folks over in maintenance services, thank you, because they really do make our city look great. Other than that, I think, this is great. I just had a lot of congratulatory comments, if any, to say, and I'm real pleased that this program is working and we're continuing to deliver on what we promised some time ago. So, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. And we go to Councilmember Lamb next, but Director Clausen, could you take down your shared screen, because then I can see everybody at what? Yes, thank you. Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you. You okay, Mayor?
Yes.
Good.
I hope.
Right. Sorry, trying to lower my hand, but that didn't quite work. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to sort of echo Councilmember Salinas' comments about really appreciating the great stewardship and to many of my colleagues who applauded our voters to bring this, to even have these funds available, and and really excellent stewardship in terms of fulfilling the promises. They are everything was a little more expensive, in some cases a lot more expensive than we expected, but $60+ million, and we have a beautiful new space for so many community efforts. We have an amazing fire training center that will be coming online soon, and then the staffing that has been programmed in to be responsive to the community, both on dispatch as well as in cleaning up, et cetera. So, I think the promises that were made in not just the ballot argument, but really that set of, this is what we plan to spend it on, and this is in these proportions, is really well done. And so I really wanted to appreciate staff for that. And, I came to this meeting thinking, okay, finally, we're ready for that. What do we do next kind of conversation? And I really want to sort of remind myself of, all right, but we've got this couple year, which we always knew we were likely to have, this moment when the funds coming in doesn't quite match the funds going out. And so I appreciate that city staff is already, on top of figuring that out, and stand ready to look at those options as they come forward. But having been ready for that conversation, I'm just going to put in a plug, because why not, which is, in the out years, what we're looking at is, maybe an ongoing funding requirement of 15. Sorry, I set my notes aside for a minute, but anyway, there is some, maybe 5 million that looks like, if I'm doing the math right, that may be allocatable to other things. And one of the things I want to put an early plug in is for lump sum payments towards our unfunded. And then to be thinking about, maybe it's a revolving loan fund around housing, about creating housing. I earlier today was in the homelessness strategic plan, when it's all ready to talk about what can we do, but we won't have money available for a good 3+ years to play with. So it might be a longer term solution for some of the things that come forward there. But one of the things I did want to put in the placeholder for, as I said, was the some annual lump sum allocations for the UAL. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So Oh, Councilmember Wahab, did you?
Yes, sorry. And just for specification, Measure C, and granted, it is part of our general fund. As someone mentioned accuracy earlier, and 60% was accurate. I do want to highlight the fact that a lot of our funds are supposed to work for what the ballot said. And again, it's public safety, it's the EMS. I pulled the ballot language as well as our other measures. And I do agree that we need to do more regarding repairing streets and sidewalks and cleaning. And to Councilmember Andrews's point, that is something that the community has asked for significantly over the course of months. And I know our staff are working on it, and COVID has impacted us. But at the same time, with a lot of the other requirements that the city wants to take on, we have to be very clear about where we are using the funds for the time being. And I hope that, and I know that Director Clausen will definitely address it in our next item. But I also wanted just to highlight that I do appreciate the fact that this information is very clear. I know our union groups are looking at this as well. But one of the questions I wanted to ask is, there's specific segments or percentages that have been pulled or designated based on these funds. So let me clarify if that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you mean.
Well, there was the political promise that was made when the measure was placed on the ballot, which sort of said, this is how much, we're going to allocate, probably I think it was $6 million towards debt service, this much towards street repairs, this much towards maintenance staffing, this much towards public safety staff or police staffing. And so I think that maybe that's what you're referring to, is that original.
If that is the case, can we add it to any future staff item? Because not all of us are aware of these political promises. It's before my time. And, for me, I like to just take a look at the actual language that the voters voted on prior to anything else. So just for future clarification.
We can pull it up. It was adopted as an attachment to the resolution, I believe, when the measure was placed on the ballot. So I think what we can do is we can at least send it to the council after this meeting, and then in future meetings, we can include it as a detachment to the staff report.
Thank you.
I have a file folder of past ballot books. I could probably pull it up right now, but I'm running the meeting, so, but we'll get that to you. And I'd just like to add, echo the other comments. First of all, thanking the voters for supporting this. Wanted to ask Mr. Clausen about the Wayfair decision, and that we are actually seeing this revenue, our half-cent sales tax in addition, because there had been some question about whether those locality add-ons, I know that recently I bought something and I was asked about specifically, where I lived, the city, and there were questions that made me feel kind of good. It made me feel like, oh, they're definitely sending our share back to us. Or, I know these funds go into a county pool. So are we seeing the additional half-cent when in our sales tax receipts right now from the online sales?
So that's a great question, and I do need to clarify. We do not, the city of Hayward does not receive the Measure C portion of sales tax when we're buying online outside of Hayward. So if it were a Hayward vendor and they were shipping to Hayward, then the half-cent sales tax would apply. But because it's outside, we do not get it. It does come through the county pool. Sometimes it's going through the state. It kind of depends on how the vendor is reporting it. But that's sort of a nuanced thing. But no, unfortunately, we do not. The city does not get the quote unquote add-on or district tax when it's coming from an Amazon or a Wayfair or a vendor like that.
That's not making a lot of happy faces I see on my fellow council members, and it is concerning. And I think we have to go back to support our local merchants when we can, and then maybe the state of California needs to work a little bit on that issue too. I don't know if it will require another Supreme Court case, but it's really not fair, and because we know that even without COVID, you know, brick and mortar is losing ground to online sales. You know, that's going to have to be looked at. When those items are delivered, they use our streets and roads to, you know, drive trucks and deliver them. I mean, there is ample justification, I believe. And so I know I serve on the League of California Cities Revenue and Taxation Policy Committee, and we have discussions about these things there. So hopefully we can make improvements in that area. And then just, you know, I would agree with some of the things that have been said about how we use it, keeping to the original promise. And that would include keeping our, what are the PMI, Pavement Management Index up. We got a big boost from the initial amount we were able to put in. And so that would be one of the things. I sure hope we can open that library, both of our libraries, back up as soon as possible. But that's another concern, is that right now we're not even able to use them. Okay, so those are my comments about this work session item. Did you get what you needed from us in terms of comment? And I don't think you were really asking too much for direction.
I have one brief comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, you know, as we talk about, you know, shop local, and, you know, and I say it all the time. I think this is also a charge to for staff and for us as a council, that we need to diversify as much as possible the retail in our city, because we just need much more diversity of retail. I'll put it to you that way. And so
we need more retail in general, but yes.
We could use more retail, but a lot more diversity in retail. Well,
hopefully once we emerge from this pandemic, we can really work on that. You know, I see a hand raised from the public, and I'm going to, in the spirit of, we're conducting these meetings on Zoom. I'm going to ask if that person would like to make a comment about this item, or Alexis Villalobos, did you want to speak on this item, or is your hand raised for another item?
Please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, I stepped away for just a second. So this question actually might have just been asked when I walked back. It sounded similar, but I was wondering if regarding the taxation of online purchases, how soon will that benefit the city, and exactly how will that benefit the city? Or I guess it might not be an appropriate time, but maybe it's a good idea for maybe some sort of like fact sheet or some sort of thing for the public to understand, what changes will be made, even if they weren't made through the city hall. But yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. So with that, we're going to move on to item number 18, which is also a work session item, and that is a review of fiscal year 2021 general fund revenue. And again, we will go to Finance Director Clausen.
All right, so I will once again share my screen here, if I can. There we go. All right, so this will be a much briefer presentation, not nearly as many slides, but certainly a meaty topic that I know all of us have been monitoring very closely, as our general fund revenues really will help us to guide our budget and our expenditures as we move forward here. So what we've got here is a snapshot of revenues for the fiscal year, for the first few months of the fiscal year, in comparison to the first few months of the previous fiscal year, which I'm aware that a portion of fiscal year 2020 did include the start of the pandemic, but the months here were not impacted by the pandemic, and so it was much more of a quote unquote normal year for the city. We saw the good news is our property tax was up about 10%. I'll go more into that on the next slide, which actually includes the December payment. So it'll give council a better idea of what our the number one revenue source for the general fund looks like and what we can expect for the fiscal year. We have seen a dip in sales tax, no surprise. We've also seen a slight dip in our utilities users tax. This comparison shows a dip in the franchise fees. However, that is entirely due to timing. We did a bit more analysis. Last year, we had 2 payments come in from July to November, and this year we only had 1. That second payment came in December and actually bumped up the franchise fees to about an increase of about 5%. Not surprisingly, we've got a small dip in real property transfer tax, as there were just not as many homes that sold, not as many transactions. The good news there is that we are seeing stability in the market for homes in the area, which is great for real property transfer tax and property tax revenues for the city. That certainly doesn't help in the area of affordable housing. So I don't want to celebrate too much there. We also see a huge dip in our transient occupancy tax, which is not surprising. As we know, people just are not traveling at this point. We've got a big increase that I will mention here in our intergovernmental. The reason for that is the nearly $2 million that the city received in CARES Act funding that came through the state. It came into the city during the first few months of the fiscal year. Unfortunately, at this point, we have no indication that we will be getting additional funding. The CARES Act has largely ended. That doesn't mean it won't come in a different form with the change in the administration in Washington, D.C., but to date, we haven't seen any more. That's kind of the majority of the city's main revenue sources. We've seen a drop in charges for services. I think that's likely due to people using less services, less development, less, sort of a lot of confluence of factors there. So I said that I get back to property tax. This provides a comparison of the December remittances from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2021. As council knows, the city receives the 2 large property tax payments from the county in December and April. This December's payment or remittance was about $1.4 million more than fiscal year 2020, which is fantastic news. It's about a 5% growth. Some of that is simply the inflation factor, which was 2%, but also when properties change hands, the new tax basis will be set at the whatever the purchase price was, and not at a previous lower basis, which allows the new assessment to really increase the value of the property. The sort of downer news, if you will, is that the state's assessors have told agencies to use an inflation factor of 1.036%. This is the first year since the Great Recession that we have not hit the 2% maximum. And so hopefully that's a short period of time that we'll have to sort of miss out on the maximum adjustment. But obviously, this is a reflection of the times and the way the economy's been going as of late. So Also wanted to provide council with a small update on COVID-19 funding. I guess the update isn't small. I would say the amount that we've received is actually less than I would hope for. I mentioned the nearly $2 million in CARES Act funding. That's on the second line here. The other smaller amounts are, we received a grant for PPE for the police department early on in the pandemic. I am happy to say that as of today, the city received a $1.5 million payment from the County of Alameda under an MOU that reimbursed the city for test kits that we paid for at our testing site from March of 2020 through June of 2020. And so that will certainly help. It's been an agreement that we've worked long and hard on, and very grateful that it finally has paid off. The lower box on the page is HUD funding that we received through the Community Block Development Grant. And we have received a little over $900,000 to date. And still there's about $1.2 million that we'll have access to as we go and spend the funds and offer that to the community. That's really all I've got. Happy to answer any questions. I will take down my screen now so we can see everyone, but if anybody needs me to put it back up, I'm happy to.
Okay, and I'm gonna go first to see if we have any public comment, which I do not see any hands raised from the attendees. Madam City Clerk, are you aware of anyone who wants to make a public comment on this item?
Madam Mayor, I'm not aware of any public speakers at this point. I believe no one is wishing to speak.
Okay, then I'm going to close public comment and go to my fellow council members. Let's get back there. And we'll go to Mayor Pro Tem Wahab.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Clausen, could you go up to, I want to say your second slide, maybe it was your third one.
Not that one, probably, right?
No, not at all. Yes, this one. And to, the Budget and Finance Committee, I know we've seen this and we've kind of have a little bit more in-depth conversations. I do want to highlight the transit occupancy tax. With so many cities in the county kind of moving to put COVID positive patients into some of the local hotels, has that not proven to be an increase for us, or how's that working out?
So it has not. I don't know that how many Hayward hotels are actually being utilized for quarantining of positive COVID patients. What I can say is that even if they are being utilized, it's certainly not to the capacity that generally in a quote unquote normal year the city would be experiencing with business travels, with tourism, et cetera. It's no surprise we've heard from some hoteliers asking for extensions on their transient occupancy tax, and just sort of mentioning how much their business has been reduced during this time.
Okay, and I know the cannabis revenue. There's nothing projected here. Are you able to share an update that you shared with us in our subcommittee?
I am happy to. So the city did receive its first payment for cannabis tax from a retailer that recently opened in the city. We received a payment for about $90,000. And that was for a quarter of operation, although we're aware that the business didn't operate for the entire quarter. So that is fantastic news. Hopefully that just continues to grow, and that the city will see additional revenues from that, and have that at its disposal for use for services, and whatever the council decides the best use for those funds are.
Definitely. And then can you also explain to the public the fact that our reimbursement funds that we receive from state/federal regarding COVID is not dollar for dollar? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure, and a couple points here. So the 1.98 or as I referred to it earlier, almost $2 million that the city received from the state really had very little to do with actual reimbursement. That was something that the state offered to cities throughout the state, cities and counties, I should say, throughout the state to continue to combat COVID. The city will be seeking reimbursement from multiple agencies to help to reimburse the expenses that it's laid out in an effort to fight the pandemic. Almost all reimbursement will come with some level of cost share. The one that we refer to most often is FEMA, because they are the one that deals the ones that deal with natural disasters. So often we'll be using that framework, even if it comes from, say, CDC or another source. But that being said, the city will only receive 75 cents on every dollar that it is found to be an allowable cost by whatever the agency is. So it's not at all dollar for dollar. Sometimes it's not even 75-25. It's really kind of whatever the agency that's reimbursing sees as fit and allowable.
Yes. And I appreciate that. And I just want to highlight that to the public because, a lot of, our funds are being used to ensure that the public has what they need. And we're trying to be as nimble as possible. So I want to highlight that. But at the same time, we are not getting dollar for dollar. So it is impacting our budget. And I just want to share that with the public. I also wanted to ask in regards to, how should I say this? What is our unfunded liabilities is one of our biggest debts, if you will, right? Can you elaborate a little bit more about that or where we're at? High level.
I guess what I would say is our revenues haven't changed our outlook as it relates to unfunded liabilities. They're in a similar place, I would say, to when we last spoke about, when we were adopting the fiscal year 2021 budget. So, the city still has some sizable unfunded liabilities as it relates to, the pension liability as well as our OPEB liability. Those are the two largest that we've got. We have made, certainly for our pensions, we continue to make the required contributions as we have, since the dawn of time, if you will, with CalPERS. Council did commit to making a contribution towards the OPEB ARC this fiscal year, but it was at a reduced rate in comparison to what we had projected, essentially because we were not able to, the budget wasn't able to support it like it would have been able to if we didn't see this pandemic-related recession. So that's, I think, as much of an update as I can give at this point, really.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight to the public again, our unfunded liabilities being such a deep, load for us, if you will. It is a promise that we made to every single staff member that has worked for the city and has retired, and we make sure that they are taken care of, and that is the promise that I will definitely try to honor. I know council is very much interested in honoring this promise. And the reality is, I also know that council has in the past, we've talked about it, and that we do want to make some significant contributions to our unfunded liabilities, and we are trying to be nimble. I do want to again thank staff for taking their furloughs and their COLA deferments and so forth. And I know that a lot of people are concerned with the 12 positions from the PD that's frozen. It was a kind of give and take as they did not necessarily take a furlough or a COLA deferment. So that was kind of the middle ground, if you will. But I do want to highlight that I know that we have some union groups that are very much interested in looking at some of the cannabis revenue that looks extremely promising to be dedicated to that. So that is something I am working on, and I do appreciate staff and Director Clausen, yourself in particular, for and your team for constantly giving us updates as we need it more and more because of COVID. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Clausen. This is a very detailed, updated report, so I appreciate you bringing it back to us so quickly. What will be the next steps in terms of mid-year? When will we be looking at the numbers again?
Yeah, so we will be bringing information back to council in the coming month to consider mid-year requests. With that, we'll also provide an update not just on revenues, but on expenditures as well, and some projected numbers through the end of the fiscal year, and then looking forward to give council a better idea of where we're at budget-wise. What the bottom line will look like, and how we've fared through the first 6 months of the year. So we'll be bringing that back to you in February, and the conversation will really just continue to roll through as we go into March, April, and May as we work through the fiscal year 2022 budget process.
Okay. And then in regard to the franchise fee, so if I understood you correctly, this is just July through November. So December, there was an additional payment. So we should see that difference when we do the mid-year. Yeah.
And the two will look very comparable. Not that they aren't comparable at this point, but that 10%, that negative 10% will actually reflect a positive 5%. So.
Okay. And then in terms of the utility user tax, I'm really just shocked by this, how it could be down when everyone's spending more time at home. So do you have a sense of why this is? This just mathematically doesn't make sense to me.
I thought the same too. All I can chalk it up to at this point before we've got additional information on use is that we do have segments of the business population that are either working reduced hours. Some segments are completely shut down. Certainly folks are not out as much as they have been. With outdoor dining, it's going to be a lot less electricity to sort of light up and heat with propane in ways that they weren't doing inside of restaurants, hopefully. But that's I have looked into it to an extent, and kind of comparing to other jurisdictions, and it's not out of line there. But I will take a deeper dive into it to see what I can glean, to see, if there are certain segments that are more impacted than others, or their utility use is more impacted than others.
Okay. And congratulations on getting that $1.5 million from the county and the reimbursement on the kits. That's great. I know that there was mention that we still have access to more CDBG funding. I really appreciate staff using our existing body, the Community Services Commission, to weigh in on recommendations that are aligned with the council's priorities. So I'm assuming when more money is released, that will be done again. Is that correct?
I don't imagine that we would take any other route.
Okay, great. I think those are all my comments and questions, but I really appreciate the ongoing dialogue about this. And of course, we want things to change. This council is very committed to reducing our unfunded liabilities and having ongoing discussions with all of our labor groups, and fully acknowledge that the majority of our employees have really sacrificed a lot. So just want to appreciate everyone for their work and commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't see any other council hands raised right now. I'll just say, echo those comments, especially thanking, well, before I was just going to comment, Councilmember Marquez, that I had the same question at the budget committee meeting about the utility user tax, because that didn't seem to make sense with everyone, being online so much more than we used to be. So it will be interesting to see what, what they come up with, or what Director Clausen comes up with on, the answer. And I may ask some of my fellow mayors too, when I see them, what their results have been, but that does seem strange. I want to thank, staff, first of all, for the incredible amount of work they've had to do on this since, since we knew the COVID shutdown began. We had no idea that it was going to be going on as long as it has. And now we still don't really quite know when we're going to be on the other side of this, and what the ultimate impact is going to be on our businesses, our revenues, just the general welfare of our population. But we're not in this alone. Obviously, we have, we're in the same boat as everybody else. But I think the city staff has done incredible work in just trying to look at every way we can save money while, every way we can possibly increase revenues during this time. I do want to thank Council members Lambden and Wahab for who, along with me, serve on the budget committee, because we've been working on this too, and we will continue to be doing that. We will get through this. In our long-term budget planning, we had a recession built in, and hopefully this is it. And although it's of a different nature than we had realized, because I do think it's going to somewhat change the way we live our lives. But you just have to take life as it comes and work through it. And I think that's what we're doing. And I just especially commend you, Mr. Clausen, and the city manager, and all of our employees throughout the organization who have contributed to helping us get through this, and we will get through it. And
Mayor, I'm sorry, I have one more quick question.
I didn't know if you had not just put, okay, go ahead.
I apologize. I forgot to ask. So we had a ballot measure last November, a TOT, and we also made a commitment that if it were to pass and we were still in the pandemic, that we were not going to increase that tax, but we haven't had a discussion. So can you just reassure the public that we have not increased the TOT rate?
We have, so that is accurate. We have not increased the TOT rate. The ballot measure that was approved by Hayward voters was to allow the city the ability to increase the tax, but did not automatically increase the tax. The voters approved a tax up to 12%, I believe. We have not adjusted it. There has not been any action taken. I think the earliest that we committed to even considering an increase was after 6 months of the calendar year. And, at this point, when we're still not sure when the pandemic and the shelter in place orders end, I don't think there's any rush to do that. But, we'll continue to have that conversation as we move here. And I know it's not council's intent to harm any of our local vendors.
Thank you. Thank you for that update. And thank you again to our voters. Also want to acknowledge and thank you. I know you're not only the finance director, but you're the acting HR director right now, which we are recruiting for, but thank you for holding it down. We appreciate it.
Okay. There are no further council comments at this point. We will move on to our first of all, we will go back to item number 15 and consider it in conjunction with item number 19. So I assume that, Madam City Manager, that staff will combine both of those items into the presentation here.
Correct. I believe that because we had talked about this earlier today, that staff just added a slide that will talk to item 15 as well.
All right. So will we go now to Assistant City Manager Ott?
I believe either she is kicking it off or our housing manager, Christina Morales.
Yeah, I think Christina Morales has the PowerPoint is going to present.
Okay, Ms. Morales, are you here with us?
I am. Sorry, a few technical difficulties sharing the screen. Oh, there we go. I couldn't move the window. There we go. And I assume you can see my screen now, correct?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Holliday and members of the council. I'm Christina Morales, Housing Division Manager, and we have folded into our presentation a discussion on supporting legislation that extends the tenant protection in the state legislation to the topic that we are here to review tonight, which is extension of the temporary eviction moratorium related to COVID-19 and extending that through June 30th, 2021. Next. So there we go. Just to provide a little background, I feel like we're all very familiar with what happened in March of last year, but a number of measures were put into place to protect people from the spread of COVID-19, including state of emergency, executive orders, and shelter-in-place orders. And because of that, and the loss of jobs and reduction in business revenue and business closures, the city found it necessary to enact an eviction moratorium to protect both renters and commercial tenants from eviction. There are also moratorium legislation on the county and state level. And it's important to highlight that the eviction moratoria that the city had enacted is for commercial evictions is set to conclude January 31st, 2020, which is at the end of this month. And that also the state legislation that provides protections to tenants, homeowners, and small landlords will also conclude at the end of this month. So this is how the two items are hand in hand, that we need to enact a moratorium on residential protections in the event that the state does not enact legislation to continue their tenant protections, and also extend our protections for commercial evictions. So here we have just a little discussion on some of the implications. As I mentioned before, the state moratorium will conclude. When they enacted their legislation, they preempted cities from extending any local moratoria. So ours ended on September 30th, 2020. We do anticipate that the state, and we know they're working on legislation to extend their legislation, and we anticipate that it may preclude our legislation, but we just want to make sure in the event that the state does not reach a decision on the extending their legislation, that there are protections in place to protect Hayward tenants from eviction. And in addition to that, since the state legislation does not include any protections from commercial evictions, we also need to extend our moratorium on eviction protections. What we're proposing would be to enact a moratorium that's the same as the one we enacted last year, just extending the existing commercial legislation to June 30th through June 30th, 2021, and also enacting a new residential moratoria from February 1st, 2021, which is after the state's legislation concludes, and then through June 30th, 2021. So it would apply to the same target populations as before: residential units, including owner-occupied residents with mortgages, and commercial units, and would have the same prohibition. So it prevents eviction for non-payment of rent, of mortgage and payments, rent and mortgage payments related to COVID-19, also prohibits associated late fees, prohibits evictions for no fault eviction, and any retaliation against tenants and homeowners. The requirements would be the same, that the landlord, the tenant has to make a good faith effort to notify the landlord and be able to provide documentation to support claim of inability to pay related to COVID-19. They are still liable for any unpaid rent. And we have expanded our mediation services to help tenants and landlords negotiate repayment of past due rents. We would continue to allow, after the moratorium concludes, a 180-day period in which the tenants and landlords could negotiate repayment and come to an agreement in an effort to avoid evictions. I would also require that the tenants and landlords meet and confer prior to initiating any action to evict the tenant. We also have a few administrative revisions to the draft ordinance, and I would like to ask the Deputy City Attorney, Vadim Sidelnikov, to comment on these next couple of slides.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a couple of revisions to the ordinances in front of you, the two ordinances. First being the commercial eviction moratorium. Both the revisions are to Section 10. So there's some cleanup language that we're filling in here to make sure it is clear that the ordinances would become effective immediately upon your vote today, and that they're effective through June 30th or upon the expiration of the governor's executive order. And that's in regard to the commercial eviction moratorium. Can we go to the next slide, please? And then the residential eviction moratorium, again, Section 10, it's cleanup language. The ordinance you received contained the language from the prior ordinance being an expiration of September 30th, 2020. And so again, the cleanup is to reflect what Housing Manager Morales has presented to you, that the ordinance would be effective through June 30th, 2021. And I'm happy to answer any questions on this. Thanks.
Thank you. So what we're recommending tonight is that we would extend the eviction moratorium on commercial evictions and also adopt a temporary moratorium on residential evictions for the specific period starting February 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2021. And that's in consideration of the fact that these moratoria are set to expire, both the City of Hayward's commercial eviction moratorium and the state's residential moratorium. The state of emergency continues while some of the statewide shelter-in-place orders are being lifted. We still are under the county's order, and people are still suffering from job loss. We're asking that this be adopted as an emergency ordinance, which would require 5 affirmative votes. If we have 5 affirmative votes, it would be adopted immediately. If only 4 votes, then it would be adopted at the next council meeting. And we would have a lapse in the protection to the tenants. In addition, as we discussed incorporating the item 15 that we're suggesting, we've actually modified our recommendation in support of legislation, state legislation to extend the tenant protections and provision of rental assistance. We've come to realize that there's an additional piece of legislation that is being reviewed by the state, which is Senate Bill 91. So they will likely take action before January 31st. And we know that their Senate Bill 91 is scheduled to be heard on January 28th on this Thursday. This legislation would extend those tenant protections to June 30th, 2021, compared to what's proposed under AB 15, which is proposing to extend the protections through the end of this calendar year. And what it also does, it establishes the state rental assistance program. So we're modifying our recommendation to include support of Senate Bill 91. And also, as we've noticed that we're trying to support a moving target, any state legislation that is substantially consistent with the above reference situation, or sorry, it's above reference legislation. So what we would do after based on the action of the council is, if approved, we would continue to inform tenants and landlords of their rights and responsibilities under our ordinance, and also any approved state legislation. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
All right, and we will go to council first for questions. Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify in regards to just residential single-family homeowners as well as commercial. they're both being taken care of, if you want to clarify that.
Correct. So under our moratorium, the residential homeowners, they're protected in the from any eviction from the property. They're not protected from a foreclosure. There's other legislation in this state that does require that lenders provide that work with the homeowner to provide a forbearance and work with them to hopefully modify their loan if necessary.
And then for commercial properties, let's say, people that own their restaurant, their, random other retail, how's that being taken care of?
So that is, we've separated the City of Hayward moratorium into two separate legislations so that the commercial moratoria would help the tenants of commercial properties. So if they own it's a restaurant, they're unable to pay their rent related to COVID-19, they have that separate protection. And then the housing eviction moratorium has been separated independently in the event that it gets superseded by any state legislation, that we can move forward with the protecting the commercial tenants.
Okay. And in one of your last slides, maybe it was second to last, we are including AB 15, 16, and potentially 91, correct?
That's correct. Senate Bill 91.
Yeah. All right. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Housing Manager Morales. You mentioned the state legislation being a moving target. Can you just help me and the public understand who's tracking all this legislation? Is this staff, our lobbyists? Can you kind of just give us a sense of how you're keeping up to date with all of this?
I think the answer is it takes a village. So we are talking with the lobbyists who we work with to track the legislation. We also have the consultant we work with, Project Sentinel, that provides the mediation services for the City of Hayward, is also keeping track of the legislation, and they're also commenting on all of the proposed legislation. So they've done a really excellent job of kind of breaking down the legislation for us and keeping us abreast of it. And then other community members and council members as well, providing us insight as to things that they've heard. So we're getting a lot of information from various people.
And are you aware of any other cities being proactive in taking this approach?
I have not looked into whether any other cities are supporting the legislation, no.
Okay. And then does staff know if there's any updates, since we do have a new federal administration, with regard to any kind of funding? I'm really worried about, this is a Band-Aid, right? At some point, the bills have to get paid. So are we aware of any updates of, financial assistance being available for paying these mortgages, whether it's commercial or residential?
Right. So the Senate Bill 91 does discuss how they would distribute the funds and the program for providing rental assistance to property owners and tenants for past due rent. And that it is my understanding is that counties will get a direct allocation, and any cities greater than 200,000 people would receive a direct allocation. And then the state is also getting separate funds. I'm still trying to clarify the details on it, where if it's an additional fund or they're only assisting the cities and counties that don't get direct allocations from the federal government. But what we've heard from the county is they're anticipating having the ability to provide up to 1 year's rental assistance for low income and very low income households. So there is an income cap limit to it. But it definitely looks like it's more than just a Band-Aid, that it would really help kind of bridge the loss of revenue for the property owners to help them stay afloat, and also prevent tenants from having a large debt that they would not be able to pay off on their own. So it does seem like it is going to be a sizable assistance.
Okay. And with regard to the courts, there's still no evictions occurring, correct, in Alameda County?
Currently, the courts in Alameda County are implementing the county moratorium. So there's very limited reasons why they will accept an unlawful detainer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Salinas. You are muted, Councilmember Salinas.
Of course I am. How did we land on June 30th? What's so special about that date?
I think we're looking at just continuing evaluating what's going on. We do know that some of the shelter in place legislation is being lifted, and so we're going to start seeing change. We would note that it's consistent with the proposed SB 91, Senate Bill 91 legislation for when they would end their protections. And that we think that we're nearing recovery, but in the event that we aren't, we would have the ability to extend it further if we get closer to that date and we don't see people recovering.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And Councilmember Zermania.
Thank you much for the report. On a worst case scenario, this could go on to December 31st of 2021, correct? But we don't want to get there. But I imagine that it'd be the same process that we're going through at the moment that we would go through in order to extend it another 6 months. It would be the same process.
It's a possibility based on the legislation proposed by the state that the rental assistance, as it reads right now, would provide not only assistance for past due rent, but for rent that's coming due. So if there is a rental assistance program in place that could provide assistance on an ongoing basis and people aren't in risk of being delinquent on their rent, even if there is still people haven't recovered from job loss, if there's that support system in place, there may not be a need for the moratorium.
Okay, all right. But we would be ready just in case. Hopefully
we'll keep watching, yeah.
Thank you very much. Good job.
Thanks.
All right. I don't see any other questions right now from council members, so we will open public comment on this item. And I think that we do have some. And so we'll go, looks like Bobby Lopez is the first one on the list. Madam City Clerk.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Bobby is the first one. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Halliday and members of the City Council. I am Bobby Lopez with Build Affordable Faster California, a project at Todco, who is an affordable housing provider here in the Bay Area. According to research from UCLA, by maintaining an eviction moratorium through the spring and summer, California prevented an estimated 86,000 cases of COVID and an estimated 6,520 COVID-related deaths. An eviction moratorium not only prevents homelessness, it saves lives. SB 91 is a stopgap measure to meet the February 1st deadline. And yes, it is being heard on Thursday. I do want to note that AB 15 and 16 are still alive, and Assemblymember Chu is likely to come back with much needed cleanup to SB 91. I think that's an expectation. I do want to also discuss some polls that we have done at the state level and in the county level that may also help inform your support for what's before you today. We commissioned a poll last week, January 16th through the 19th, from Binder Associates of 600 California voters, about a margin of error of 4%. The vast majority of voters, 71%, support the extension of eviction moratorium, with 69% of those agreeing that the moratorium should remain firmly until the end of the year or until the pandemic ends. Only 8% supported a short-term extension of 3 months, 17% for 6 months. We believe the length of the moratorium proposed in AB 15 is in line with the vision of Californians for caring for our most vulnerable tenants and landlords until the end of the year. We also commissioned a poll last September 2020, 19th to the 21st, from Binder Associates as well, of the cities of Alameda, Berkeley, Oakland, and Hayward, with a sample size of 750 total, including 150 people in Hayward. So larger poll, 4% margin of error, smaller poll, 8% for Hayward. In that poll back in September, we specifically asked about county extension for moratoriums, and in the city of Hayward, the support was around 71%. So I guess Hayward is indicative of the state. The other thing I do want to note that I think is very important and somewhat troubling is that we asked the question, I am concerned for myself and my family and the ability to make rent and mortgage payments. 35% of all renters and homeowners expressed strong concern in the city of Hayward. But when we just collated information for Hayward renters, there was a shocking 67% of Hayward renters that strongly agreed with this statement. That's very different than what we saw in Oakland and Berkeley. In Oakland, only 33% of renters and 32% of renters in Berkeley expressed strong concern. Also want to note that this is an issue impacting low-income communities. 65% of residents making 24 to 49,000 K agreed strongly with the statement that they're struggling to make rent. So I only have 23 seconds, so I have to make it count. Obviously, please support what's before you. I do want to say that there are some problems with SB 91. The length is one, but the other major one is that it's an opt-in from landlords. Most landlords will do the right thing. I know that to be true. However, as a former housing inspector that mediated disputes between landlords and tenants in San Francisco, there is a small section of landlords that might not, and that is worrisome. And yes, this is being discussed. SF and Berkeley already supported AB 15 and 16, and it's actually currently being discussed at the Richmond City Council, and I shall pulling information right now. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you so much for the information. And so our next speaker is Alexis Villalobos.
Please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I just want to reiterate what the last speaker said, is that there's this study that's going around on NPR, National Public Radio, about research that's done here at home in California at UCLA, but also across the country with researchers from Johns Hopkins that found that over 433,000 excess deaths from COVID, or excess cases from COVID, were related to eviction moratoriums being lifted by states. And that included 10,700 excess deaths that were related to moratoriums being lifted. So this is a really urgent matter. I know your hearts are in the right place. I really trust that you're going to do the right thing. I'm concerned by the resolution to support AB 15 and AB 16 being pulled from the consent calendar. I just want to remind everybody that that amounts to nothing more than a recommendation letter. It is a recommendation to the state to do the right thing to save people's lives. But if for any reason that does not pass, AB 15 or AB 16 or both do not pass, a recommendation letter is not enough to save people's lives or to help people who are hurt by COVID. So it will not rid you of any guilt if things do not go the right way. So at this moment, when you do have the time to take action, when you can do something, please do the right thing, extend the moratorium. And I do want to remind every council member that this is an emergency ordinance, so it does require 5 votes. And if it does not get those 5 votes, we will remember who did not vote for that. If it does not get those 5 votes, it'll delay the process. If it gets 4 votes, I read the agenda or the report by staff. It won't go into effect until I think it was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong once this is over, 30 days after the next city council meeting. And that's a time when the eviction moratorium will be lifted. And that's a time when people could be at harm and people will be at risk and could be infected and their lives at risk. So just asking you to do the right thing. I think all know what the right thing is. Pass both of these things. If you're going to want to pass one and not the other, pass the resolution or pass the legislation to extend the moratorium. That's definitely the more important one here. It's the one where you actually protect Hayward citizens, Hayward residents here. And I'll yield the rest of my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Alicia Crater.
Please go ahead. Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alicia Crater. I'm a lifelong Hayward resident, a renter, and a local organizer. I'm calling in support of extending Hayward's eviction moratorium as well. Throughout this pandemic, our national and state leaders have continued to show us that they don't give a fuck about working people. As the death rate caused by the pandemic continues to rise, restrictions that are meant to protect public health continue to loosen. And every day, Black and Brown essential workers are forced to put their lives at risk for the sake of the economy and for their own survival. Many who are still out of a job and are now in an unfathomable amount of debt to their landlords. I spent the last few months assisting tenants with rental debt with applications for financial assistance, and I can tell you firsthand that Hayward tenants do need help. While my job didn't administer rental assistance for Hayward tenants specifically, the number of tenants from Hayward that were calling in or applying to programs of other cities highlights that there's a need in Hayward that is still not being met. These tenants will not be ready to pay off their debt in any time soon. And I hope that extending the moratorium is a simple ask that you all can agree on. Hayward tenants need every bit of your support and your advocacy as our state and national government continue to push them closer and closer to homelessness and death. So please extend the moratorium tonight and support the bills that were talked about earlier. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't see any other requests to speak from
Mayor Halliday. We have one.
Melissa Franklin.
Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. This is Jeff Giroux, not Melissa Franklin, property owner for the building formerly known as the Green Shutter, Hayward's only historic building, and president of the Downtown Hayward Improvement Association. I want to say that I am in favor of an eviction moratorium, but I am disturbed that yet again, the council is considering legislation that does not address the fringe cases, that fails to address tenants that can pay rent, yet are hiding under the moratorium as cover for essentially a free loan. As a landlord, I'm still required to pay my property taxes, my mortgage, my insurance. I'm expected to take care of my tenants by taking care of maintenance issues, which I very much do, as you're all aware, at the Green Shutter. And I have my obligations to pay. Nothing in this legislation helps me or any other small property owner in any way. And it actually sets tenants up for failure. The tenants that are, especially ones that are abusing it, taking advantage of this situation, are going now on almost over a year without paying rent. How do any of us expect them to actually come current? Not one of you so far has mentioned anything about concern for small property owners. And the staff report was shockingly one-sided. It, again, failed to mention anything about the devastation facing landlords. Those of you who were around in 2008 remember the foreclosure mess. It was not good for landlords, but it was incredibly difficult on tenants. And if I lose my building to foreclosure, it's not some small property owner like me that's going to come in and buy it. It's going to be some institutional New York firm that's faceless and not invested in the community. So again, I'm in favor of this moratorium, but I'm urging you to temporarily table it because the courts aren't processing evictions anyway, and address the fringe cases. Don't let Bill Gates be my tenant, not pay rent, and essentially give me the middle finger and hide under this moratorium and hide under the court's failure to process unlawful detainers, and then work technicalities to stay in an apartment for the next year or two because there are 3 or 4 overlapping jurisdictions covering this eviction moratorium. So again, I'm in favor of the eviction moratorium. And in the entire time I've owned the B Street apartments, we've only evicted one tenant, and that tenant was a convicted felon that set up shop as a drug dealer in our building. Only one. And you guys remember how many tenants were there when we first bought the building. We went about it compassionately. We worked with nonprofits. We worked with veterans organizations. We helped people find homes before we embarked on our multi-million-dollar investment. And I'm asking you, I'm urging you to give me the confidence to continue to invest in Hayward. Please don't let this be a one-sided conversation. Please adopt reasonable legislation that takes into account property owners' issues. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. So now I do not see any additional comments from the public. So we will close public comment and move back to council, and I will entertain a comments or a motion. I see Council Member or Mayor Pro Tem Wahab's hand raised.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move the item to extend the moratorium as well as support the resolutions AB 1516 and SB 91.
Second.
Thank you. But I also want to highlight Mr. Giroux's comments. I know that in the Housing Committee, we often talk about trying to be holistic and so forth. And I know I've asked specifically about, what's going to happen to the actual property owners. I know I've reached out to our rental housing association as well. And I know early on that they were supportive also of these moratoriums. They were concerned as to how long it would last, but they did not push back on this. I know also to Mr. Giroux's comments, one of the frustrations, and I will share this with you on council, at least for me, I know I'm also concerned with individuals that are taking advantage of it. And I do believe it's few and far in between. I don't think it's a significant portion of the population. But that also has to deal with the courts and their decisions, the county as well as the state. As you heard from one of our speakers tonight, there is significant cleanup. And I do believe that our state legislator, all of them pretty much, are going to try to think about other ways to also address some of the concerns you have. And I would recommend reaching out to both Senator Wieckowski as well as Assemblymember Bill Quirk, as well as anybody else that you know. And I want our staff to also see, at least provide us an update of exactly what's happening on behalf of the property owner side of it as well. I think that's important to just highlight. But I also do believe that this needs to take place. And, you know, just out of concern that a lot of people have, and I know this is a very uncomfortable time, I want to highlight that even President Joe Biden says housing is a human right. And that has changed in the tune of the federal government. And I'm very happy about that. I lived through the foreclosure crisis. I know how difficult it is when the property is taken from you, and the programs don't actually address a lot of the needs, you know, myself included, my family included. And it was stated that legislators must expand and change when necessary. Their philosophical approach to housing, such as abandoning trickle-down housing as the chief solution to the housing affordability crisis as well. So I'm excited to see what happens on the federal level, but I also know that people are struggling and suffering, and I just want the full conversation to be on the table because, again, as I often say, we are one community and we do have to help each other out. So thank you.
Thank you. So that motion to support the full staff recommendation regarding the moratorium, that both residential and commercial, I assume, and also the state legislation, both in the Assembly and the Senate, bills on this, and made by Councilmember Wahab, seconded by Councilmember Salinas. And so let's see who we have now.
Madam Mayor.
Did you want to speak to it, Councilmember Salinas?
Please. Yeah, this is, to say these are tough times is, I say that without understating it at all. And, one of the experiences that I've been reflecting on over the last year, when, in this pandemic is, how much good or what can we do that is good and helpful for families. And, I also, in a lot of the, housing issues, like tenant protections, they fall, in this case, they're falling on local governments. They're falling on us. And, if, I think about, and I do understand, and I absolutely, I've spoken to many property owners, and yes, they haven't been paid rent, and they're hurting too. I'm not, not every property owner is sitting on a bucket of money, and can sit on, people and can wait for people to pay rent in a year. No, they have to meet their monthly mortgages, and they have to meet their monthly bills, and they have to clean the properties, and they got to maintain it. I get all that. And, but at the same time, I'm also very disappointed that in the last year, the federal government hasn't done nothing to support families. Nothing. They haven't held banks accountable. They haven't told if we really want to lick this, then why doesn't the the banking committee go to the banks and say, don't, put a hold on receiving loans from property owners, from multi-unit family housing owners, and, do something in that spirit. But they don't do that. They certainly weren't going to do that last year. And so now we have a new tone in Washington. Hopefully it gets better. Here we are talking about, we're passing this SB or AB 15 and AB 16, and I agree with the caller. These are supportive words. This should be a slam dunk for the California State Legislature. Slam dunk. But here we are on the 11th hour, right? The first, the 31st is Sunday, and here we are, the 11th hour, still concerned. We're doing this because we're concerned on what the state will do. And so in the meantime, local governments are doing this. City councils are doing this. And I'm proud of this council that we've been pretty consistent. We have been protecting tenants, pretty consistent in the city of Hayward, and we get kicked in the teeth for it, but we do it because I think at the end of the day, the council does fall in the right place. We do fall on the side of good, and but I conclude my remarks by saying, while local governments are getting clobbered by housing advocates and community advocates and so forth, I think we also need to look at other folks in the pipeline or in the chain of command or in the hierarchy or in the order of things, who are also bearers of responsibility, like the federal government, like Congress, and banks. And so with that, it's going to be a pleasure to be voting yes for this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Mr. Giroux's comments on what are we doing for the property owners. And I'm very concerned about the loss of property in order to provide rental housing for people. And also people, there's a bad connotation when it comes to landlords in that term. We need to really think about families who are landlords who are trying to provide rentals for people. And so I'm really concerned that when I see letters of support like this, it's great that small landlords are mentioned, but I am unclear on how they're actually getting assistance and would like to see more information on how they're getting assistance. It's very difficult to rent out in good times. It's extremely difficult when you have moratoriums here that really kind of handcuff these landlords into collecting any kind of rent. But I also I'm also thinking about how our renters are really struggling. And I'm just reading now that 85% of Black workers have filed for unemployment, 85%. And then 99% of those Black workers who don't have a college education are filing for unemployment. So this is an emergency. This is a crisis, but we also need to have the same attention to the landlords in order to pay these bills. I agree with Councilmember Salinas on the banks. I'm reading that just one bank posted a $5 billion profit this quarter. $5 billion, and we are not holding them accountable. We as a city should be writing to our government and say, let's ask these banks to help these landlords out. Give them a line of credit so they can pay their utilities. Think about what we can do in terms of their loan, where it's not going to make their loans even more expensive just because they're taking on this moratorium on collecting mortgage payments. So I just wish that the city could also speak to what's happening to the property owners, but I understand this is crisis. This is a crisis and we need to help renters out there as well.
I'm not sure if there was a question in there about speaking to what we've been doing to help landlords. Did you want a response on that, Councilmember Andrews?
I know that I have talked to the Rental Housing Association as well, and from what I understand, that there is rent relief, but they say it's a drop in the bucket to what they need to pay in order to maintain their properties. And just wanted to see if there's any other programs out there that the city is helping with, and if there's anything else we can do to help property owners.
Yeah, and I think we've done a lot in our rent relief program, particularly to help lower income tenants. And I think the challenge becomes when you get into the more middle income tenants, because a lot of the federal funding, like through the Community Development Block Grant and the CARES Act, really had to be focused at low income tenants. And so I think there are some gaps where we aren't able to help some folks. And then with the business community, we have done a lot of partnerships and grant programs early on. And then we just, the council approved matching funds for the county's business grant program. So we were able to help, a significant number of Hayward businesses. But again, clearly not enough to meet all of the need that's out there. And our staff has been incredibly diligent, keeping track of potential resources that we can be supplying to our community.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if there's a letter of support that we can draft to.
I was, just made a note and will certainly be open to that, and would ask staff to give input into.
I think we can probably include that in the support letters for AB, the legislation. Maybe also include a push for the legislature to really look at a broader, more comprehensive rent relief package for sort of all income level, sort of median, middle income, and low income, as well as commercial tenants as well. So I think that's for small businesses. So we can definitely include that in the letter.
And to to Councilmember Andrews's point, I know that when we first did the moratorium almost a year ago now, I want to say March, we did ask for a letter in support of all property owners, both residential and commercial. I believe that that was part of one of the requests I know I've made, that the mayor support. The Rental Housing Association was supportive of that as well as the realtors. So I'm not exactly sure where that went. I know I've asked our city manager about that, but I think that's great. So we have been working towards that. So great points.
Thank you. Was that? Let's see.
I thought I heard Councilmember Andrews cooking up an amendment. I'm just saying.
Well, yeah. Well, we. Would you like to make an amendment to the motion that we?
I support it. If that.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Salinas.
Well, let me think about it. No. Yes, of course.
So we will fold some letters to our, I think, state and federal representatives. We have a new senator now, and of course an old senator as well, but and a congressman who is rather occupied at the moment. But I'm sure he would read our letter and be supportive of these issues. So we can add that into the motion, letters to our state and federal representatives to help the people who are in this situation, both renters and landlords. And for that matter, asking for small business help too. I think Councilmember Zermeño wanted to weigh in.
Just thank you. Banks have been mentioned, and unfortunately and sadly enough, banks like PG&E don't give a hoot about anybody who's in need. I do have a question for staff. There are folks who take advantage of this. There are folks who can pay their rent, but they're not paying it, as Mr. Giroux mentions. So staff, is the city, is the county, is the state, are the feds doing anything to find who these folks are? Can we do anything? I know that people exist. I know that they're doing it. I mean, we were paying unemployment to prisoners. So staff, any notice, any news on that? Can we press somebody to do this? Because it would help business owners, especially. Anything on that? No?
Well, I think what the courts are, since they are following the county-wide moratorium, it's a very limited reasons why they are accepting unlawful detainer cases. So it's really only for health and safety issues where people are endangered. And so I don't think we're looking, unless the county was willing to change their legislation and expand reasons why they would accept an eviction. But I think part of the difficulty here is determining which tenants have taken advantage of the situations and which ones haven't. I think in terms of the overall objective of trying to prevent the spread of COVID-19, I think the legislation was written in a way to err on the side of protecting people from the spread of COVID-19, knowing that there are going to be cases where people take advantage of the legislation that's intent is for protection.
And that's a sad part, that we can't do anything to solve that and get these folks really to pay. I mean, the message is, if you're able to pay, please pay. But, they're hiding behind it. Okay, so we have consistently supported our folks who are in need of rental assistance and of protection from evictions, et cetera. And this is one further step. I think we will continue to do this for a long, long time. I just need to remind us all that we need to also make sure that the small mom and pop homeowner who rents a house, a second home, who needs that rental income from that nest egg that they built up, they also need protection. So we can't forget them. So I will keep supporting our folks, and I will certainly vote yes on the motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there any other council member who wishes to weigh in at the moment before we go to? Okay. And I will just say I'm very supportive of the comments that have been made. I'm aware of isolated cases. We get calls from people who are convinced that their tenant is able to pay, but isn't. I know that we did, and I certainly support making COVID-related loss of income, a part of, a part of it, so that if you're not paying your rent, it should be for that reason. Obviously that's not something that we can monitor or enforce very well. So I would, in addition to the letters to our state and local representatives, I think it was Councilmember Wahab that recommended that we have staff. Somebody recommended we have staff look. Maybe it was Councilmember Andrews. Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry. But that we, have staff try to.
Councilmember Wahab mentioned that it was already mentioned earlier in the year, so just wanted to highlight that.
So just to clarify, we supported Councilmember Andrews and the letter in support of our property owners. But I think for you, regarding the study and just more analysis, I did direct that hopefully to staff so they can just.
That was what I think we've already included the letters, but also having staff do what you can to look at that happening here. Now, clearly we've never said that this rent is just forgiven. This rent is going to be due when this crisis is over and people are back to work. But that is where we know that some people are going to be, are simply not going to be able to come up with it. And those are the people we need to try to, their landlords are the people we need to try to help so that we can keep the people themselves housed and the landlords compensated for, for their being landlords and being in this business. So it's we're not alone in having this problem. And I don't think we're alone in having, wanting our representatives at higher levels to provide some better solutions and frankly to provide some funding that we can use to help out in these situations. But it's going to be a thorny mess to sort through, because I don't want to, I want to see what we can do to make sure that people who have been in this situation where they have been able to pay, but knowing that they won't get evicted, have chosen not to. I think it would be sad if they got away with it without some measure being taken to force them to pay this undue rent. And, it's not easy for, landlords in the situation to, encounter all the costs of bringing those cases either. So I think there's going to be a lot of sorting out to do at the end of all this. But for now, it's in everyone's interest that we don't have a lot of evictions and people out on the street. That's just not something, that we ever want to have happen, but it's certainly not at a time like this. So with that, there aren't perfect solutions to everything, but I appreciate the staff's work in bringing this to us in a timely manner tonight. I hope that it sounds like it will pass with, sounds like it, at least the 5 votes. And I would bet on, more than that. So with that, if there are no further comments, which I'm not seeing, on the motion by Councilmember Wahab, seconded by Councilmember Salinas, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Lambden, sorry.
No, I didn't raise my hand. I just, so I lost power for a second, which is why I left the meeting and had to come back in. And so I think I've caught up with what the amendments were, but could I ask you to just restate, you or the city clerk, to restate them just one more time before we vote, just to make sure I'm clear?
Well, my understanding is that it includes the staff recommendation on both the residential and commercial protections or moratoriums, extension, support of the state legislation, which includes 2 assembly bills and a Senate bill, letters to our state and federal representatives to find a way to assist in compensating, especially compensating landlords who, are out income due to people not being able to pay, but, still being in their units. And finally, asking staff to do what they can to assess the extent to which in Hayward, I'm not quite sure how you're going to do this, but, to the extent to which landlords in Hayward are really suffering from not getting rent. I mean, I'm sure that many rents are being paid, but we don't have a handle on how much. I mean, not everybody is just stopping rent payments. I think most of the people who can are paying rent. And so if there's any way our staff can communicate with our landlord community to see how to try to start gauging how extensive this problem is. That's how I would put it. Does that sound? And that is basically the motion and second as it has been amended.
I really appreciate that. Those are great amendments. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Yes.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Yes.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes. And the motion passes with 7 aye votes unanimously, which means we have enacted it as an emergency ordinance to go into effect immediately or February 1st. Since ours extends the current state. Yeah, it's starting February 1st, right? Because the state legislation goes.
We'll know hopefully by Sunday if our residential moratorium is superseded.
Okay. and we'll hear from you. I'm sure we'll be following the news on that too, and it will be in the news. So let's keep our fingers crossed. But in the meantime, I guess we're going to get perhaps email messages at this point out to, and all of us can do that individually as well as having, an official one from.
We're going to be working on some communications. It's a little tricky because we don't want to send notice out about the city's moratorium if it isn't then superseded by the states. So we're trying to figure out the timing with which we're going to notify folks. So you can, obviously the council can tell your networks if you would like to do that or if you receive questions, but we'll also be working on the citywide communications.
Okay, I meant on the communication to our state and federal representatives, especially the state ones in support of those two, the state and assembly bills. If we could try to shoot an email out tomorrow, even, to them, is that possible?
I think we'll work quickly to get the letter ready to go so we can get it out in the next.
Okay, great. Okay, good work, everyone. And that brings us to comments from our city manager. And I would specifically, and hope you were planning to mention the wonderful news we got today about our COVID memorial that we're doing at City Hall.
Absolutely. That is on my list of topics. So the first, there were two items on the agenda, the consent calendar that the council approved related to grants and funding for the Patrick Avenue roadway improvements. And I believe in the fall, when that item had come to council for initial discussion and then some community concerns had been raised after that, we had committed to the council to conducting a community meeting before additional work was done out in the neighborhood. So before we commence the work that was approved this evening from the contracts that the council approved, we will be conducting a community meeting on February 22nd at 6:30 p.m. and it will be done via Zoom. There will be information on the city's website and on the Patrick Avenue project website. Is not up there yet, but it will be shortly. That will include the Zoom link. And so we will also be notifying folks who are on our sort of interested parties list for that project of that community meeting, and we will report back to council. And then secondly, as the mayor mentioned, we have installed a memorial at City Hall, and this is in order to honor the 149 lives in Hayward that we have lost to the COVID-19 pandemic during the first year of this major incident. And so if you are at City Hall, you can see there are small American flags. There are 149 of them that sort of circle. They're sort of posted on the interior of the rotunda. And if you go at night, the entire rotunda is bathed in amber light, which has become the sort of symbol of the pandemic memorial. And then there is a message projected on City Hall that says, "We remember." And so we started that projection at 5:21, I believe it was yesterday evening, and it will stay projected for 149 hours. To commemorate those lives lost. And so I just wanted to share that with everyone, just so everyone was aware of why the new decorations were up at City Hall, and also to really just honor those lives that have been lost, including one of our own city employees who did live in the city of Hayward. So I want to just thank the council for your continued support as we face the challenges and help our community recover from the pandemic.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate staff's efforts in that. I'm sorry none of us are there tonight to see it, but I'm going to definitely try to stop by and after dark to see it this week. I think that was a very nice way to have a tribute. Or commemoration. And I hope people will drive by and see it. With that, we will move on to council reports and announcements. I'm looking to Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to thank staff wish everyone a happy and healthier new year. Hopefully things will turn around for the better in our community. Just wanted to give a couple brief announcements just to remind folks. I know there's a huge need for food. So just to remind people that they can pick up food from 2 to 4 from South Hayward Parish off of Patrick Avenue every day of the week except for Wednesdays. And then the city of Hayward is also still distributing food on Thursdays outside of Chabot College parking lot. So just encourage people to take advantage of those resources and also to utilize 211 for any type of information or referral. And our test site is still up, so that's also available to the public. And hopefully soon we'll be getting information in terms of vaccinations, but we need to get the supply first, and we're following the state guidelines, but hopefully we'll be able to give updates in the near future about where people can go to get vaccinated. But just wanted to share those resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zermino.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see, a couple of folks have asked me if I would propose to my colleagues that we could consider a task force on art and culture in the city of Hayward.
I've been asking.
I would actually recommend, we do have the upcoming retreat on February 13th. To discuss the strategic roadmap. And during that retreat, you will see a lot of new projects that have been added over the past year as a result of COVID. And we've had to slow down on a lot of work efforts that were already on the council's strategic roadmap. So I might suggest that you bring that up during that retreat. There was a survey that I did send to the council. So you have an opportunity to suggest that as part of the survey as a new project that you'd like us to consider looking at. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I will do that, and I bring it up. I know that we will discuss it, so I'll bring it up later, but I did promise that I would discuss it. I would bring it up today, so I keep my promises. Thank you.
Okay, we heard you there. It's on record. So, Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. We're almost a month in, and this is our first legitimate city council meeting. I know we've had some closed session meetings, and I know we've had some meetings the night before and last week. I do want to say Happy New Year's to all the folks that are watching still. I also just want to thank staff regarding this, support for AB 15 and 16. I really do appreciate the quick turnaround. And I know that, everything that we do with COVID is kind of like a moving target, right? So hopefully we can do a little bit more around that. I do just want to ask staff, just because I know I've been working on this, kind of the Wi-Fi project. There are some concerns about just 5G and so forth. So if we can get some, let's say, feedback on, the health aspects of it. I know that we've talked about it maybe 2 years ago also, that, we technically can't ask questions about 5G. I don't know why, but it's some federal law, right? So I just want to see what we can get there. I also know that in a conversation with our superintendent that there is interest, and I know that they're in a conversation to continue the request that we did about the joint meetings, the full body joint meetings. So I'm excited about that. I would like to state to staff that if we can ensure that maybe we just talk in depth on one item rather than, and just get briefed about some of the other things, because I didn't feel like the last meeting was as productive as I'd like it to be. And so if we can do that. And also, I know I asked staff that as we are trying to be more equitable and inclusive in our city in all things that we do, that we also include in our job applications for the city to have a non-binary option in our job applications and so much more. So I again, just really want to thank staff for kind of moving quickly on a lot of these particular items. And I know that I'm excited for next week with Councilmember Andrews and Councilmember Salinas on the economic meeting that we're going to have the first of the year. So very excited, very nervous to see what we're going to do next year, but I'm looking forward to it. And I hope 2021, it already feels a little bit brighter. So I just wanted to share that. And thank you to all my colleagues and of course, staff for all the work you guys do, whether it's actual meetings or actually just, planning and reading and thinking about things. So thank you.
Thank you. And okay, I don't see any more. I just would echo some of these comments. That you referenced that I want to thank the members of the council for stepping up and, being willing to serve on our various committees. We've made some changes. So our Economic Development Committee, which I guess hasn't met yet in its new form, has 2 new members, council members Wahab and Andrews, and the remaining former member, council member Salinas. I've moved to a different committee, and council member Mendel has moved off the council altogether. So anyway, we have some changes, and the public can we'll see that if you're interested in these committees. Just want to thank staff for all your efforts to keep things going during the holidays. And also thank the Martin Luther King Committee for putting on what I thought was a really good program. And I hope that everybody had a chance to see it. If not, it is on our YouTube channel, which can be accessed through our website. But it was actually put out there on the Martin Luther King holiday. We couldn't have our regular program at Chabot College. And to that end, we also had a meeting of the volunteer dinner committee, which we had to forego our annual volunteer dinner last October. And we just don't even know right now what the situation will be this coming October, but we are thinking that a dinner with the 400 some people that we usually get is maybe still not going to be happening this coming October. So we're working on contingency plans for that, because rather than cancel the event altogether, we do want to get back to that tradition, even if we have to go back to it in a somewhat different way than we've done it in the past, including being virtual. But I know that the city staff is working on when we're going to start reopening some of our facilities, including our library, as we talked about the library tonight a lot, and our city hall, and we'll probably be bringing us more information about that as we go on. So with that, it is we're going to move to adjournment, and tonight we haven't met for a while, and we will be adjourning in memory of 3 people who we have lost in the last month plus that we haven't been meeting. And the first is Lois Grasecci. And Lois, who started out in life as Lois Pike, moved with her family to Hayward in 1942 and attended local Hayward schools, including Burbank, Bret Harte, and the old Hayward High School, graduating in 1955. She then, and during that time, she met and married Rudy Grasecci. And as many of you know, Rudy is the owner and proprietor of the Cobbler shoe store on Foothill Boulevard, and Lois worked right with him for some time, I think, during their marriage. And so, she, along with Rudy, have been part of our business community for quite some time. And she passed away, I believe, in December. And so keep your thoughts with Rudy and the rest of their family. We heard about the passing of Raymond Gums, who wasn't currently, but had been a resident of Hayward for 60 plus years of the Hayward area, and operated a barber shop and later a beauty salon for over 60 years in the same location, which I'm told is Kelly Hill, which is right outside of the city limits, but is certainly a part of the Hayward community. And it's noted by the person who sent this to us that he was the only barber for people of color for some 30 plus years in Hayward, which I think is a very sad thing to have to say. And I think highlights why we are now trying to work so much locally and thankfully now at the federal level too, on equity issues in our society, because we still need to do that. So that was Raymond Gums. And then finally, I want to mention Tom Garino, who was basically, I believe, I'm not sure was the exact title, but he was a government and public relations official for our area for PG&E. And I know that isn't everyone's favorite company, but Tom Garino was sort of a mainstay. I mean, he was somebody who tried to work with our, local agencies in his jurisdiction and be a liaison between us and PG and the company, and was just really active in the entire community. He was a presence at PG&E for 18 years and just worked with a lot of us elected officials, community organizations throughout the Bay Area. In fact, he was somewhat known as the mayor of PG&E. And he passed away, I believe, that was in either at the December 30th. So I think he will be missed in
Madam Mayor?
the area. Yes. Councilmember Salinas, you wanted to comment?
I just wanted to say my condolences to to Tom's family. Tom, he was a significant donor, contributor at the Hispanic Community Affairs Council of Alameda County. He had, he would, sort of rope people in throughout the Bay Area to contribute to students, East Bay students. He single-handedly was able to connect thousands, hundreds, if not thousands of students to scholarships. And he, no matter what foundation it was in the East Bay, no matter what education group in the East Bay, or in the Bay Area, he was at every single one of them. If you look at the program, his name was always on there, and he was always a significant contributor. And he helped a lot of students. He enabled a lot of students to go to college, and he will sorely be missed. So God bless him.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So with that, we'll ask city staff, we send letters and we'll offer to work with the families to plant a tree somewhere in Hayward in the honor of each of these people. So in honor and memory of Lois Diane Grasecci, Raymond Gums, and Tom Garino, this meeting is adjourned.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.